Hello, I'm Jenna Carpenter, and today I'll be presenting the first half of my group's project. So, we're trying to improve communal mental and physical health through the Community Green Act. How often do you go outside? Nowadays, individuals are spending more and more time indoors and on electronics, according to register-based researchers Dyson, Emain, Hollis, Hansen, Gales, Brandt, and Peterson in their 2020 study, Environmental Health Perspectives. This is negatively impacting mental and physical health. Do you know? A 2017 study, The Nature of Americans Natural Report by Yale School of Environment, found that children 8 to 12 years old spend 3 times as many hours with electronics as they do playing outside. Okay, but what does this have to do with us? If continued, this problem not only affects our health, but also our friends and family and generations to come. Our proposition. Residential zone areas are required to have designated community green spaces that are pedestrian accessible before they can be approved for building. Past interests and attempts. Dolores Hayden discusses an American tradition centered around the idea of the public space in Building the American Way, Public Subsidy and Private Space, 2008. We had an American history of plazas, pedestrian arcades, courthouses with trees shaded, and then houses were grouped around green spaces, giving everybody access to these locations. Bankston, Fletcher, and Nelson affirmed this in Public Policies for Managing Urban Growth and Protecting Open Space, Policy Instruments and Lessons Learned in the United States. They discuss how 19th century urban planners had planned to have regional parks and nature reserves. So, what exactly changed? The privatization of public space. Elizabeth Blackmore explains how traditional city planning was scrapped for more profit in Appropriating the Commons, The Tragedy of Property Rights and Discourse. Open public spaces were filled with, instead, commercial hubs, crowded housing, city sectors without care for well-being. Past solutions include Dolores Hayden also discusses the rise in American public fear, 1950s, including the industry boom and expansion. At this time, they had passed the Standard City Enabling Act. This required dedicated portions to include public spaces, but it was criticized by real estate lobbyists as too idealistic and un-American. Therefore, it was defeated, and it didn't have that much of an impact. Interest in the public space had waned, but was later revitalized in the 60s. However, nobody really passed any legal authority with the public's interest. So, our current issues, Bankston, Fletcher, and Nelson also write that private public funded projects lack any sort of government accountability. Local legislation, such as APFOs, adequate public facility ordinances. These are local legislation requiring having these sort of accessible facilities to people. However, it's only in a local district section, and there's issues sometimes when both local areas conflict with each other. Seth Lowe also ties this into private gated communities and how open spaces has become a thing that only wealthy people can afford and not a public necessity, and how it also increases the value of the land, and that's why it's only really built. So, and she discusses that and how private interest takes over public space, zoning, taxes, and incorporation of gated communities in 2006. So, our past problems include lack of organization. As I discussed before, ordinances, policies conflicting with each other. We don't have any federal support. There hasn't been any federal laws to take place. And if so, they were defeated. There has been legislation statewide and in cities, but nothing on the federal level to make this the same in all states. And there were past strategies before with private businesses and incentives, but these were not effective. So our solution to solve all this is that we're advocating for our policy on a federal level.